By the end of this video, I'm gonna be able to tell you with a 98% accuracy whether or not you are gonna make it with your wife or not, based on 4 simple behaviors. I'll tell you at the very end of the video based on that study, but right now, I wanna jump into the most powerful part of the video, so let's just hop right in. So the first sign your relationship is doomed to fail is critical criticism, or criticism critical, right, the CC. Now, this comes in the form of whenever someone uses criticism in communication with you and your wife, oftentimes you'll use the word you. Immediately when we hear the word you, we go on to number 2, which is defensiveness. We'll get there in a second. Also times, you can use the word always or never, like you never do this, you always do that. Or there's ways of attacking your partner, not their behavior, but who they are as a person. So let's say, for example, your wife thinks that you don't do enough housework. You're lazy, right? You never do this. Now, the reason why this is bad is because as the person receiving the criticism, you can't change who you are. Like you're calling me lazy, that's a character flaw, right? That's not something I can actually change. So if you're the one giving criticism, or you want to teach your wife to have the opposite approach, but I'll teach you guys those after we go over the negative ones, oftentimes it comes from attacking the behavior. So the example positively to use is, I feel blank emotion, oftentimes frustrated because the housework wasn't done when I came home, right? That implies that you can actually change the behavior to make the person happy and meet their needs. Now, I will say that most often the women use criticism, and I want you to recognize a little pro tip here, that every criticism is a request in disguise from your wife. And that's because more times than not, women speak indirectly. I want you to imagine ever being on a date with your wife or girlfriend, and she's freezing, right? She's cold, you have a jacket on, and instead of her saying, hey, give me your jacket, or I want your jacket, she'll look at you and say, oh man, it's cold, that jacket looks really warm, right? Women speak indirectly oftentimes. So I want you to start to read your wife's mind and say that every time she has a criticism, it's a request in disguise. I literally just got off a call with a guy. This is what prompted this whole video idea. And he was telling me the criticism his wife gave him was, you are never home. You're never here with the kids. And I said, if that was a request in disguise, what would she be saying? And pretty intuitively, he said that she wants me home more. It's like, yes. When she says that to you, if you thought to yourself, her saying behind those words instead, I want you home more, do you think you'd show up to her differently in that moment? Of course you would. But most often when we hear the word you or we feel attacked, what's our natural inclination? To defend and deflect. Of course, if you feel attacked, you're going to defend yourself. So that's natural, but I want to let you know that when you defend yourself, this is what creates that demon dialogue where both of you start going back and forth. You start getting all frustrated, flustered, angry, and nothing gets resolved. Because when both of you are in that emotional state, your amygdala, the flight, fight, or freeze response, your blood's rushing to your limbs, you're ready to fight, you're ready to flee, or you're ready to shut down, nothing will get resolved. So instead of defending yourself, take a second, take a deep breath, and I'll show you what to say instead in a second. But over time, if you guys are criticizing each other, rationalizing, going back and forth, deflecting, you're trying to defend your position, what happens over time is that all that anger, all that hurt starts to boil up, and contentment goes up as well. Now, contentment is also saying that there's resentment that starts to breed between the two of you. Dr. John Gottman is the one who created all these patterns of 4 behaviors in communication. And he said resentment is the corrosive acid of relationships. That the more you guys start to resent each other, you start to see each other as more of a signal of stress in your life instead of hope and love and acceptance. Your partner's more of an enemy than someone on your team. And that's what pushes you guys away over time, simply from repeated 4 signs of negative communication patterns. That's why with over 98% accuracy, I could tell if you're doing 1 or 4 of these signs with your partner, the relationship is doomed to fail. Okay, now, ultimately, when you have enough crazy contempt with each other over time, oftentimes the man is the one who will shut down because he feels so overwhelmed. He's not going to literally fight his wife, right? So he shuts down. And oftentimes what happens, unfortunately, is that when a man shuts down, the woman's thinking he doesn't care. So she ramps up her criticism. And the whole cycle repeats more and more until eventually a huge blowout, right? That words are said that you just don't mean, you can't take back. So let's look at instead the other signs of how to respond instead of these 4 signs that your relationship is over. Now, the way to respond instead of this criticism, I call calm conversation. So let's say you ever have a criticism towards your wife, right, or your girlfriend. Instead of putting in the you language, take a deep breath and ask yourself, how do I feel about this situation, right? Delete you and start using I instead, because your partner should not argue with the way you feel. They did something, you felt a certain way about it. You get to own your own emotions, and you're not wrong in your emotions. And so you have to convey that to your partner by saying, I feel blank because of blank, right? So the example I gave with the person I was just working with, the man in the marriage mastery program, I'll tell you how to join that in a second. He said, after his wife brought that up, I said, how would you respond from this framework, the calm conversation? He said, well, I would tell her, I feel confused and hurt because I'm working really hard and I want you to be able to see that and appreciate me. So that's good, right? You're saying exactly how you feel based off what she said to you. And you're remaining in the calm, mature adult status. And if one of you remains there at least, then you can bring the other person out of their emotions and compromise can occur. Okay? So always start the conversation with, I feel this emotion because of this reason. All right? That's where to start. For number 2, let's say the criticism was thrown at you. How do you respond instead of defending and deflecting? Well, you use extreme ownership. By the way, that's a book by Jocko Willink. Highly suggest you check it out. But extreme ownership is owning up to how your actions made them feel that way. Even if she uses the wrong language of you and always. Don't say, hey, you're not supposed to use always. You're not supposed to use you. That's not the right way to go about it, okay? I want you instead to take a deep breath and see from your partner's perspective that whether you meant it in your intention or not, your behavior made her feel that way. And so you're going to own up to how your behavior did make her feel that way. You're not saying that, yes, I agree that I meant to do that, or that I meant to hurt you or had bad intentions, but I will say that by me doing that, by me not being home enough for work, not being around you enough, you felt isolated, not appreciated, and lonely, right? You're owning up to that, and that helps her calm down. Because if you seek first to understand her and her emotion and her world, she will calm down and she'll be more receptive to understanding your part of the story as well, okay? So own up to your part in this. Now, if you're starting to feel resentful, you have rationalized a little bit and you've done these 2 signs and you're taking a second, you have mindfulness around, okay, hold on, this is devolving into something negative. I can tell I feel really frustrated with her. What you're gonna do is cultivate love. And look, cultivating love isn't some airy-fairy idea. Ultimately, you both want to be happy. She wants to be in a happy relationship with you, and so do you. So if you take a second and realize that, you do what's called a repair attempt. Dr. John Gottman talks about this. A repair attempt, when couples do those, the most successful couples have these repair attempts. Essentially, when you guys are in this crazy demon dialogue, you're in the middle of it, you could say something to lighten the mood. There's plenty of examples, but one example you could use is, look, we don't have to fight about this, or I don't want to fight with you. Let's take a second. Let's start over. We can pause this. I don't want things to fall apart, right? This is that repair attempt, and it's a sign of maturity if one or both of you can do this and be receptive to the other person if you do. There's no strict rules on fighting. You don't have to continue in this angry conversation once it's going. You can start over. That's all right. 4th and final sign, if you guys do get to this last stage of shutting down, you create cool down. All this is, if you're feeling flustered, you're feeling emotional, flustered, and overwhelmed, you know in that state, nothing has ever been resolved when you've been in this negative state. Nothing, ever. Across the history of time, I would argue. Maybe one random example, but probably not. So it's totally okay to take a break. Say, hey, look, I'm getting emotional, I'm getting upset, you're clearly upset about this. I want us to work on this. I don't want to completely shove this under the rug, but I want to take 5 to 10 minutes, cool down, and come back to you when I can feel calm, right? It's totally okay to do that as well. And again, successful couples are the ones that are able to do that. Now, these 4 signs are called the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse in communication and conversations with relationships. Now, Dr. John Gottman is a preeminent relationship expert. He has something called the Love Lab for over 30 years, I think at this point, or 40, where he would study couples in a closed environment, right? They were talking, they're arguing. And he could tell in the first 5 minutes, 98% of the time, if they were doing these 4 signs, that he followed up with these couples later. And the ones that did these 4 signs, 98% of them were over, where they were done. Or if you use the repair tips and all the other 4 responses instead, you're actually able to be in that top 2% of relationships, to be happy, to be flourishing together. If you do one or all 4 of these signs, then ultimately it stems from a deeper underlying inability to know how to communicate with your wife or girlfriend. If you want those skills and the ability to not only get your marriage back to the way it was, but better than it was before, for a limited amount of time each week, we have a couple spots available to set up a free call with our marriage evaluator. On that call, we're gonna assess how your marriage got to be where it's at, the things in your behavior, all the history, and then how to look forward to say, how do I get to the place where I want to be, and all the obstacles that might come across the way. Because let me tell you, after hundreds and hundreds of marriages over the years as a licensed therapist, I'd be an idiot if I couldn't tell exactly what caused you to be where you're at with your wife and how to move forward effectively. Watch this video right here as well. It'll really help you on communication skills before you jump on a call. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.